I take full
Take full
responsibility for everything that happens
to me.
I take responsibility for my actions and strive to act in responsible ways at all times. I am accountable for what occurs as a result of my actions, and I even accept responsibility for what happens to me as a result of other people's actions. I don't blame others when things don't go or don't seem to go my way. By taking responsibility for everything that happens to me, I find I am able to have much greater control over the decisions of my life. By being responsive in my world, I am able to shape it in ways that work for me. So, wow, that is such an important one. Because there you go. If you don't want to be a victim or you don't want to see yourself as a victim, then taking responsibility. And again, that one that says I take responsibility for things that happen to me, even as a result of other people's actions. Okay, I was there. I was in that world. I was present. This somehow it affected me. So how can I take responsibility? A lot of people think it means, I don't know, that whole thing about, you know, we create our own reality and that kind of thing is hard for people to understand, because then if something happens that's just a big epic thing, it doesn't have to do with some small thing I did. It's hard to, then it seems like we are victims, or we could be victims. But no matter what, if we don't like how it's going, then the more responsibility we take for it, then the more we're able to control it. And I do think we do want to control what happens in our lives to a certain extent. We want to have a beautiful life. We want to have a loving relationships. We want things to go our way. But by blaming others or feeling victimhood, then we end up by being victims. You take responsibility for what happens to you?
I guess so. Yeah, it's just clearer when you take responsibility. You're giving your life the power to do greater things, and focusing on your own world lets you feel the world in its multiple levels. It goes beyond being a plus or minus situation to a all-encompassing situation. So you're feeling the depth of life, not just the surface level.
Yeah, reaching in. So how does it resonate? How does that phrase of taking responsibility for things that happened to you that weren't your fault or something, how does that work?
Well, I agree with what Dean is saying, because if you don't blame things on other people, things that happened in your life, if you don't become a victim, and if you don't blame others, if you take responsibility for the way you react or behave, then you see the other people in a much more compassionate way, because you can understand. It doesn't mean you have to accept their behavior, but it gives you an ability to kind of understand why they are relating to you in the way they are. You know what I mean? And it kind of, in a funny way, I think it depersonalizes the event that may have upset you or made you feel victimized in some way. So if you take responsibility for your own reaction, yeah, I just think it, like Dean said, I think it gives you a much more complex and holistic view of our relationships, you know, with others. I just want to say, I saw this movie yesterday called Women Talking. Everything that we've talked about through the whole year, I highly recommend this film, Women Talking. It's phenomenal. It's based on a book that was loosely based on a true situation in a Mennonite community in Brazil. But they've taken it to a whole other level, and they really address this issue of forgiveness, responsibility, compassion, community, love. It's phenomenal. And I think anyone who's been in this group with us would appreciate the film. So highly recommended.
I absolutely love this topic. When I don't want to get into big sob story at all. So, but when I was 12 years old, I tried to commit suicide. But that's in the past. But when I did that, obviously it didn't work. I realized that it was the stupidest thing I had ever done in my whole life, ever. And from that moment on, I decided that I would take responsibility for my feelings. From that moment on, I would take responsibility for my feelings, for my actions, and for everything that would ever happen to me. And it was such an amazing thing to realize that at such a young age. And so I started planning my life. I mean, I couldn't, necessarily change the circumstances where I was, which were really not that bad. I was just overly sensitive. And I started planning my whole life, and I've been doing it ever since. And I've taken responsibility for every single thing that has happened to me during my whole life. And I still do. And even, if weird things happen, or whatever happens, I make myself responsible for putting myself in that situation in the first place. Like, even if I happen to be in an environment where something happens and, it just happens that I experience the effects of it, that I didn't do it, I make myself responsible for putting myself there in the first place. I mean, all of it. And I think it's a huge, for me, it's been a huge thing in my life.
How does that make you feel towards people who might be trying to limit you or affect you negatively in some ways?
Oh, I make myself responsible for putting myself in their environment. I don't have to be around those people.
Oh, okay.
And if I am around those people, I don't have to take it personally. Obviously, it's about them. Like, everybody grows up with a different background, with different life experiences. And so they have different expectations. And that's just the way I look at it. Especially after the trip I just took to Thailand, but now that was a whole different environment. But like, I've lived in 7 states and 3 countries, and that's by choice. And so I realized that if I run into somebody that's only lived in one place their whole life, they can't possibly have the same outlook on the world that I do. And so if they think that, well, things should just be one way, well, I can understand that. Why would they think it has to be any different?
I think it's good also that you are choosing not to judge a situation or somehow, and you're turning it into an opportunity for expressing compassion.
Yeah.
Because and this is obviously in our very divisive society now, but it's always been that way. We just are seeing it a little bit more strongly. But we judge each other. We judge things that are different from us, even though we think we've evolved in some way, or we're not as something or other as those people are. We do judge. And that's just something that we get to work on while we're here living on Earth, because as we judge, they're just another part of ourselves who have been exposed to different kind of situations or different kind of information, or they've either chosen it or they've, that's what they've had access to. So I think it's a really important thing that you bring up in terms of taking responsibility and then also turning it into a way of being compassionate.
So I had an experience like I know we all do when we're children, that forms our identity, but I had an older brother with Asperger's syndrome. It was undiagnosed at the time, and he really terrorized me. And I chose to deal with it by closing my heart to him. And then, of course, that at such a young age, 4 or 5, and of course, I closed my heart to most people, especially men. And I didn't realize it until just the last 2 or 3 years. I've been writing a memoir, and I finally got to the crux of that. And so it's like, how can you take responsibility for something when it happened so young that you weren't even, it was in your unconscious? And so now I'm learning how to, forgive myself for not having taken responsibility for doing that, for closing my heart. I'm learning how to forgive myself for that.
It's almost like, I mean, I don't know if people actually believe this, but we choose the family of our birth on some level. We are born and we have a family that we have to deal with, and we can accept or reject it. It either benefited us or it didn't, but it's what we got, and it's what we get to learn from. And I really think, I mean, you see people who have everything. They have all the benefits. They have the home, they have the stable life, they have the 2 parents, they have the money to buy the things they need, and they don't feel poor, and they feel like they can do whatever they want. And then we have the person who's, struggling in an environment that is abusive or is poverty or whatever, and then they get to deal with that. So everyone gets to deal with what they are given. And on some level, I don't know, I kind of think that that's why we're born into certain families, and maybe that family didn't give us what we wished it had, but it gave us what we got, and now we get to deal with it and take responsibility and mold our own lives, because that's the only thing we really do have a big choice on, is molding our own lives. So that's just huge, so huge.
And also, in a situation where you were very young and you were not protected, obviously, by your parents against the bullying or whatever from your brother. So closing your heart to your sibling was a really protective, appropriate thing for you to do. So it's a terrible loss looking back that you didn't have that family opportunity, but it might not just be because you closed your heart. It might also be because your parents weren't aware of your brother's situation and they weren't protecting you. And, I don't know. I mean, I understand what you're saying about forgiving yourself, but it just seems like what you did was kind of perfect.
Yeah.
For that age. I mean, truly, a smart, intelligent thing to do.
Probably. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, not to judge yourself. And that's our big opportunity in life, is not to judge ourselves. We're trying to be open-minded to other people, but boy, the biggest target of our judgment is often our own selves, and the things we didn't do right, or we could have done better. We weren't a good mom, or we weren't this or that, or, a good sibling or something. So it's a big one. So we're all learning. We're learning. It's a lifelong process. But wow, thanks so much. These are great. They're really good.
I think one of the greatest responsibilities is taking stock of our own self, is that journey with ourselves. And as you go on doing the judgments we've laid on ourselves, going back, I work with clients sometimes, and when they go back, I do it. I'll look at something I did and go, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. Can't believe I said that. But there's 2 flips to it. One flip is, look at how much I've learned, that I'm able to look at it that differently now. That's great. I could see the progress. And the other is, as you said, someone said earlier, we deal with the cards we have at the moment. We deal as we know. And for a child, dissociation is sometimes the only way to escape the situation, and it's a built-in, intelligent, important ability. When you're in a situation, you can't leave. So in a way, congratulating yourself, you made it through because you set up protections for yourself. What a wonderful thing. So yeah, I guess I feel too, forgiveness is not the point. It's to applaud that girl and say, well done. And now we'll unwind it because we no longer need that protection. And if you're like me, you'll say, yeah, but it took me so long. I've been living with that protection all my life, and look at my life. No, 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 no. This is the moment of responsibility for what we're recognizing now. We didn't know before.
Responsibility, boy, what a big one. Yeah, no, this is great. I love this conversation.